All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking the absolutely wild and honestly terrifying story of a near-fatal cardiac event. We usually assume heart attacks only happen to the elderly or the out of shape, right? Well, today we are exploring a medical mystery that proves that is absolutely not the case. We're going to look at the fascinating physiological adaptations that can simultaneously hide and help a heart condition, and what you actually need to know to protect yourself.
Just take a look at the context behind this extremely alarming text message. This was sent by a guy named Jeff to his brother and a group of friends. They were all out at a Spartan Beast event, which is this grueling 13-mile trail half marathon packed with 30 obstacles. And here's the crazy part. Just 4 weeks prior, Jeff and his buddies had successfully run a full marathon without a single hiccup. He was fit, heavily trained, and yet, right around mile 12 of this trail race, he just vanished. His friends couldn't find him, cell service was practically non-existent in the mountains, and eventually, this one startling message finally came through via satellite.
So this really begs the million-dollar question, doesn't it? How on earth does someone with peak cardiovascular endurance end up with a failing heart on race day? Like, how do you go from crushing a marathon finish line to being rushed to the emergency room in the middle of a trail race?
Section 1. Anatomy of a blockage. To figure this mystery out, we first need to pop the hood and establish what a standard heart attack actually looks like. Technically speaking, it's called a myocardial infarction. And let's break that down real quick. Myo means muscle, cardial means heart, and infarction literally translates to tissue dying because it's starved of blood supply. So basically, a heart attack happens when blood flow to a part of the heart muscle gets blocked. If that muscle is deprived of oxygen and nutrients for too long, the tissue just starts to die.
Now, the real danger zone here is usually the coronary arteries, which sit basically like a crown, delivering blood right to the heart muscle. Notice that major branch on the left side there? That's the left anterior descending artery, and it is notorious enough to have earned a pretty grim nickname, the Widowmaker. Why? Well, because it supplies such a massive surface area of the heart, a significant blockage right there is notoriously lethal. A small branch getting blocked might just cause a mild attack, but a blockage in the Widowmaker, that is catastrophic.
So how does a blockage like that actually build up? It all starts on the inner lining of your arteries called the tunica intima. When that delicate lining gets damaged or irritated, coronary artery disease kicks off. Atherosclerosis, which is basically plaque buildup made of fatty cholesterol and calcium deposits, starts forming inside the artery walls. Over the years, these plaques just quietly grow. But here's the thing. A standard heart attack doesn't usually happen just because the plaque got too big. It almost always happens because that plaque suddenly ruptures. Your body panics, tries to heal the rupture by forming a rapid blood clot, and boom, that sudden clot completely blocks the artery, instantly starving the heart of oxygen.
And here is the truly unnerving part, guys. A patient will often feel absolutely zero symptoms until their coronary artery hits a massive 70% threshold of blockage. It literally happens silently, entirely without your knowledge. And even at 70%, it usually isn't enough to cause a heart attack on its own. Typically, if the plaque is stable at that size, someone might just feel a bit of chest pain, called stable angina, when they push themselves, like walking up a steep flight of stairs. But as soon as they rest, it goes away. It takes that sudden plaque rupture and the clot that follows to trigger the classic sudden heart attack.
Section 2. The race day emergency.
Okay, armed with that baseline science, let's jump back to Jeff at mile 12. He had literally just finished a monkey bar obstacle when suddenly he noticed his heart just racing out of control. He was experiencing intense shortness of breath, getting super lightheaded, and his vision was tunneling like he was going to pass out. It got so severe he actually had to drop down to his knees. The medical staff rushed him into a tent, hooked him up to an EKG, and they didn't see a classic heart attack. Instead, they saw atrial fibrillation, or AFib. This is this highly dangerous fluttering where the upper chambers of the heart beat completely chaotically and out of sync with the lower chambers. It violently overworks the heart and creates a massive risk for blood pooling, which can easily shoot a clot straight to the lungs or the brain.
Once they got him to the hospital, things escalated fast. The doctors sedated Jeff and performed a cardioversion. They literally had to shock his heart back into a normal rhythm. But when they ran his blood work, they found elevated levels of troponin. Now, troponin is an enzyme specifically released by cardiac muscle fibers when they are highly stressed or actively dying. So the doctors were staring at a puzzle. Was this troponin just slightly elevated because his heart was exhausted from the AFib and being shocked, or was his heart muscle actually dying?
Section 3. A different kind of attack.
Since those troponin levels just kept creeping up, doctors ordered an angiogram. And this leads us to a massive physiological plot twist. The diagnosis was a type 2 myocardial infarction.
Remember our earlier breakdown of the standard heart attack? That's a type 1, where a plaque ruptures and forms a sudden clot. But Jeff didn't actually have a ruptured plaque. Instead, the chaotic AFib drove his heart rate so wildly high that the sheer physical demand completely outpaced the blood supply. His heart essentially worked itself into tissue death because it simply couldn't get enough oxygen to sustain that insane rhythm.
And the angiogram revealed exactly why the blood supply couldn't keep up. Jeff actually had a 50 to 60% blockage right there in his widowmaker artery. This is a huge revelation. Remember that 70% threshold for symptoms we talked about a minute ago? Jeff was completely beneath it. This means the intense physical strain of a marathon 4 weeks prior and the Spartan race itself wasn't enough to trigger an attack or even cause symptoms on its own. If it hadn't been for the AFib pushing his heart rate into the stratosphere, Jeff probably would have just finished the race completely unaware of his widowmaker blockage.
But wait, that brings up a fascinating secondary mystery, right? Why didn't his heart fail weeks earlier during all those grueling marathon training runs? The answer lies in these incredible microscopic backup generators known as collateral circuits. These are tiny backup blood vessels, little arterioles and capillaries that the body can literally grow from scratch to supply alternative blood flow to an area where a main artery is compromised. It's like a built-in detour system.
It's honestly amazing. The body naturally builds these small detours as a protective response when it detects slow-growing plaque. But what's truly mind-blowing here is that second point. Consistent, intense cardiovascular exercise is a massive stimulus for growing new collateral blood vessels. Jeff's rigorous marathon training had actually supercharged the growth of these backup circuits. His extreme fitness effectively masked his heart disease, giving his heart just enough blood flow to survive extreme exertion, right up until the AFib pushed the demand entirely over the edge. In a very real way, his training saved his life.
Section 4. Protecting your heart.
So the big question is, how do you actually know what's going on inside your own arteries? Staying on top of cardiovascular maintenance requires a progression of tools, completely regardless of your fitness level. It obviously starts with your annual physical and basic blood work to check things like cholesterol and glucose. But if you have a family history or higher risk factors, you've got to ask your doctor about the next steps. A coronary artery calcium scan can actually quantify the calcified plaque sitting in your arteries. And if that comes back concerning, your medical provider can step it up to a CT angiogram, which uses contrast imaging for a definitive look at the exact amount of buildup you're dealing with.
But you've also got to be hyper-aware of what actually causes that plaque to build up in the first place. These are the hidden agitators that inflame and damage the tunica intima, that inner lining of your arteries. And here's the crucial contrast. You can be able to run 30 miles without breaking a sweat, but if you have undiagnosed high blood pressure putting mechanical stress on your arteries, or unmanaged blood glucose, or poor sleep and sky-high stress, you can still be quietly building silent plaques. It can happen to absolutely anyone, even elite, peak-performing athletes.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we are left with this really powerful truth. Exercise doesn't make you invincible to plaque, but it absolutely builds the biological backup system that might just keep you alive if things go wrong. So ask yourself, are you relying purely on your outward physical fitness to protect your heart, or are you actually looking beneath the surface, getting the right screenings, and knowing exactly what's going on?